You have two choices. Stay in class with the mask or leave.
Okay, so if I'm masked, will you have that discussion with me and actually respect what I have to say?
No.
And so I talk to the dean's secretary, and she's not masked. And then the dean comes down, the dean of arts, and when he comes down, I say I have an issue with the mask mandate, and only then, because he's unmasked too, I'm unmasked, she's unmasked, only then does he mask up, and his secretary masks up. And then I'm asked to why I am unmasked and why I'm protesting the mask mandate. And it's only when I reveal that I have conservative ideology that I'm asked to leave the campus, and he's directing me to leave his office and to go downstairs and implying that security will go if I refuse.
Even though most of the world has moved on from the COVID restrictions that we've seen over the past couple of years, in Canada, it seems like we're not done with these punitive measures just yet. And especially today, we talked to a student out of Winnipeg who goes to the University of Winnipeg, where even though the province has lifted their indoor mask mandates, the university, for some reason, has decided to continue on. And worse than that, after some of the events took place in this conversation and the emails I sent out, they actually extended their mandates again for indoor masking. So it's a bit of an interesting story, and it's a bit punitive in my opinion, just because I've asked them to justify what science they might be using, and they're coming up empty-handed. So today we talk to Ethan and we find out his side of the story, being a student at the University of Winnipeg, to find out what it's like and what he's been through as he tried to stand up and voice his concerns on this whole masking issue.
That could potentially be one that comes back should we see increasing transmission. But again, it's right now the mask mandate has been lifted.
So my name is Ethan Margolis, and I'm 24 years old. I'm going to the University of Winnipeg. It's currently my final year. I'm studying political science, and I've been attending the university since about 2017. I wanted to get my education, and I wanted to learn factually what is going on with political science, how does the world work, and it's been quite the transformation since COVID has entered upon our lives, especially at the university. And it's really shown a lot of changes in attitudes and um, morals around free speech and freedom of ideas in a university, even more than I've heard on the media. It kind of started in the middle of my first year and going even more into my second year. But it really, after my third, once COVID started, there was a lot more virtue signaling amongst the university, a lot more adversary to people who had a different opinion about the COVID-19 pandemic and politics in general. And as a political science student, I wanted to know both sides of an argument of what's going on in the world. And increasingly, there became hostilities towards those who would be suggesting, well, maybe the other side is right, depending on whatever issue you would want to choose. Something that really concerned me. There was a story that came out. It was actually on CBC of a student went to an anti-restrictions rally and was like removed from their classes just because they went to a rally and a protest. And I thought that's pretty like disturbing for a university, a place of academic openness, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, as it's purported to be. However, if you had a view that was different from theirs, they would definitely have no hesitation to remove someone from their school under peer pressure. And that's pretty disturbing because this person eventually had to fight the university to be reinstated, and it creates quite the challenge on people's lives to remove them from an academic institution due to their political views. When you go there, there's posters everywhere about mask compliance right now, staying your social distance. However, not really a lot of people like to follow the mask mandate. So, like, you can see in the university's security area, the guards there who are watching the security cameras aren't wearing their masks. So it feels like sort of a two-tiered system, rules for thee and not for me. And that's really disturbing as well. And then there was the story of the professors and faculty members who were nearly fired for not being vaccinated. That was pretty disturbing as well to hear that the university would go to all ends to try to destroy people based on their own choices. And that's also super disturbing to see that people's personal choices, which is confined to their home and their own personal decision, are now being judged by an institution that's super all expanding and can control people's lives. Because as a student, that matters to you, right? As if you work there, that's your career in the balance. It's so draconian to just let people go based on their personal beliefs.
Leading up to now, you personally have faced a certain situation. Could you go through what exactly happened?
So currently in the University of Winnipeg, it's one of the few places in Manitoba left where there is a mask mandate. And besides hospitals and homeless shelters and prisons, the University of Winnipeg undemocratically decided to keep on a mask mandate as a political measure, sort of, after the truckers' protest and after all the mask mandates in Manitoba were lifted, to continue on with the mask mandate going into spring courses. Even though everywhere else they were optional, they really wanted to enforce this. So I went to class unmasked, and my professor insisted and publicly humiliated me in front of the whole class that I leave the class. And he was saying, "No, I'm enforcing this rule and you have to leave the class." So I was pretty upset because, I go to university, I pay my tuition, and when it's spring courses, they're a lot more condensed. So it's kind of wasting my money if I'm being asked to leave when I was probably more than 16 feet away from the professor. So the COVID's not going to spread anywhere. The professor is masked, and it feels like I'm just being ejected because of my political views. So then I go down to the dean's office. And so I talk to the dean's secretary, and she's not masked. And then the dean comes down, the dean of arts. And when he comes down, say I have an issue with the mask mandate. And only then, because he's unmasked too, I'm unmasked, she's unmasked, only then does he mask up and his secretary masks up. And then I'm asked to why I am unmasked and why I'm protesting the mask mandate. And it's only when I reveal that I have conservative ideology that I'm asked to leave the campus, and he's directing me to leave his office and to go downstairs and implying that security will go if I refuse. And I don't want to be humiliated and dragged out of the university. It's not really the most adult way to go by things. So I just say my piece of why I believe this is undemocratic and how my mother and my grandmother fled from communist Czechoslovakia amongst this. And he asked me to send an email. So I did. I wrote a 6-page Word document entailing what I said to him, in an expanded format, because he didn't want to listen to what I had to say clearly, about why this mask mandate was undemocratic, why it makes no sense. And it was just absolutely crazy because I send this email. The dean of arts just sends back a bureaucratic email. I also sent this to the president of the university and also the professor who ejected me, also the head of the faculty, and also the head of my faculty in political science, just to get this on the record that this had happened and this was how I felt, that I was discriminated because of my personal beliefs. Um, and because I was, ejected, then the next day, um, there's clearly a higher security presence at the university to enforce masking. So I go in and I just lower my mask, because if I'm really compelled to wear a mask, I don't really wear it. I'll wear it under my nose. And then who's waiting for me as I'm entering class? The dean of arts, and he's trying to enforce the mask mandate. And I actually was recording this on my camera as the whole thing is going on.
The mask?
It's just crazy. Why?
Why? Because we have a mask mandate. But if you don't keep wearing your mask in there, you will be removed again.
Okay.
Okay?
It's illegal though.
It's not illegal.
It's illegal. It was undemocratic and no one
Go
voted
or
for
leave.
it.
It's your choice. Go into the class, keep your mask on, we'll take you out again.
look, the thing is did you not read my email and we could have an actual discussion about it?
You have two choices. Stay in class with the mask or leave.
Okay, so if I'm masked, will you have that discussion with me and actually respect what I have to say?
No, I'm not obligated to do that.
No, well, who can I speak to that I would be
Go
able
to class
to?
or leave, please.
Can you please answer my question respectfully? Like, it's not a hard question to ask.
You said you would fill out complaints.
I already have, because it's not fair to be treated in an inhumane way by a university I pay money to go to. It's about respect here. It's about respect here.
I'm not qualified.
I understand, but
these concerns with you,
but
I'm just not the guy.
I understand. Who can I go to then? I'm respectfully asking you, who can I go to so I can make this complaint respectfully and have an actual dialogue?
You already have. I saw
Well, clearly no one is going to. Clearly it's going to be read over and there won't be a way to actually have a discussion. Because clearly I'm just going to be labeled as something. It's not to be rude. It's just, I go here as a student. I should be represented to be able to have my ideas listened to. And when the administration is telling me as a student, hey, if you do not follow our rules, you cannot go here, because
it's everyone. It's not just students, but please, right now, you have to go to class.
I would like to go to class. However, I would like to speak to someone where I can address this concern to respectfully and in an informed dialogue.
You already have.
I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. So this is absolute insanity, and this concern should be addressed. I would love to do it respectfully. However, where I'm being treated and vilified here is not a correct way to address a student and someone who's an adult and someone who's actually been very reasonable to you. Professor, I would like an apology for how I was treated. It was inhumane, it was humiliating, and it's not right. There is no mask mandate legally in this province. So I had no say in this. I did not remember getting any email or any message or text message about this decision.
Extended on April 22nd.
Yes, but do we have, as a students, any say in that? After March 15th, and after all these restrictions were legally lifted, that's what I'm trying to say is, like, after that kind of changed the ball game legally.
No.
And, well,
the individual institutions made their own decision. This is our decision to keep with the mask mandate.
well, other countries in the world, I've been around to Czech Republic, I've been to the United States, I've been to Mexico, I've gone to a university in the Czech Republic, I've gone to Maastricht University in Brno, and they had none of these mask mandates. This was in October of 2021. So this was when still there was a Delta variant. Clearly what's gone on in Canada, and I'm trying to highlight this by my protest, is that there's been a bit of an overreach here. I'm not trying to be a difficult person here.
On the front lawn, not in the classroom, not on campus. We'll take you out. This is what you think a protest is.
A protest of simply, it does not harm anyone. I do not believe it is, and the science has proven that. The provincial health authority has said that as well. Like, this is literally just as a political symbol or political gesture. At this point, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I'm just saying people should be able to have their addresses concerned and not be treated like they're an extremist. So far, I felt like I've been treated like an extremist the entire time. I'm coming here from rationality. I've been around the world. I've been to other universities in the world. They do not have as crazy mask policing as here. And the students there, they have the freedom to go there. And they have the freedom to choose whether or not they can wear a mask or not. And they're not going to be policed by their professors and their faculty about whether or not they wear a cloth for this. This is not really that protective. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, I'll be honest, as I said in my email, I'm triple vaccinated. I've had COVID. I'll also let you know I worked this summer on the provincial vaccine task force. Okay, I'm just like going in by what the actual science is. And right now, like, you can go, so it's completely acceptable for people to go to a jet ski. 15,000 people, no masks on. And there's no vaccine checking in there anymore. And then,
if you want to go to class,
I will go to class and I will go masked.
go to a meeting.
You can go to your meeting. However, please respect when students have a concern. Do not treat them like they are extremists, horrible people. Okay? I work really hard to do well in this school. I've gotten good grades consistently since going to this school. You can ask my professors what they think about me, and most of them will say very nice things about me. So I'm just trying to address a situation that I care about. I've had this whole pandemic personally has affected me in a horrible way. I've been split up from my family for 2 years because of the quarantine hotels, costs of testing, vaccine mandates, and it has been horrible. I don't wish it upon anyone, and that's why I'm protesting. Now, I will go to class. However, please do not treat me like I'm some extremist, because it is not fair. And yes, I do have the right to protest. And yes, there is very good constitutional grounds on my side. Now, I would love to argue that till the cows come home, but I do have to get to class. Thank you very much.
I wanted to have a record of it in case if I was accused of anything. And just to set the record straight that I'm a pretty rational person about this whole mask mandate at the university. And I'm just asking for freedom of choice. I'm not against the dean of arts or this professor wanting to wear a mask, but I should have the choice at this point of the game. I'm also triple vaccinated and I've also had COVID. My grandmother fled from communism with my mother in the 1980s from Czechoslovakia, and my family, my great grandfather, he worked for the regime, so they were well off as working for the regime, but my grandmother did not believe in any of this communism. She studied at the university pursuing an economics degree, so as soon as she starts studying economics, she knows this ideology and their way of the world will not really work. So eventually in the 1980s, she wants to go with my mom and my aunt, moves to Canada for a better life. And once the wall fell, she told me that her experience of returning back was all of her friends who had protested against communism were tortured. They had their teeth removed. It was absolutely brutal just because they wanted their human rights and their fundamental freedoms that we have in Canada and that we take for granted. And I asked my mom during this whole ordeal with COVID, because my mom does business abroad and she lives abroad outside of Canada. So that affects our ability to see each other with COVID travel restrictions. She said, not even in communism in Czechoslovakia under the Soviets did we have such high restrictions on our personal freedom, our mobility, our ability to go to church and worship. That was a huge thing. Like, this was communism where they were under, and they weren't limited from visiting a church like we were under Trudeau and under other provincial governments. It's going to take a lot of people rising up. The truckers' protest was a great example of that happening in Canada. That was the most proud moment I had had being Canadian since Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal. It'd be a long time since I was proud to be Canadian, and that was that moment. And that was the average person rising up against the federal government and saying, no more, we're not going to take it. And unless there's a change federally and for some places provincially and also socially as well for how we approach one another, it's going to be very hard for a change to happen because our country and our society is so polarized. And this is a phenomenon that's happening all over the world, but especially in North America, because we're a society that's so connected, and what happens in the US affects us, and what happens with us affects the US. So it's this ever push and pull factor of change between different views going on in the world.
Multiple vaccinations, a family history of witnessing this kind of menial totalitarian approach in the past. It's a wonder why they actually do this. And you saw when he tried to confront them in a peaceful fashion to say, hey, look, this is a place of higher learning. We ought to be able to talk about these things, discuss both sides of the conversation. Well, he was shut down. And of course, unfortunately ourselves, we were shut down by the University of Winnipeg when we sent them an emailed list of questions. As it stands, they have yet to get back to me. And I gotta be honest, these are pretty simple questions, and the justification isn't provided on the website where they explain why these mandates are in place. Either way, I hope to hear from them in the future, but I'm probably not going to. For the meantime, they've extended their mandates after I sent that email to them. And again, they're not providing any justification. So it is as punitive as the Prime Minister himself, in my opinion. But nevertheless, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully in the future we won't have to deal with this as much as we have in the past. But if individuals aren't willing to stand up against what they believe to be false, to be unjust, then we're going to face more of it in the future. So who's to say where this will all lead us? For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizzard. Rebelnews.com is where you have to go if you want to help support our independent journalism. Unlike most mainstream media outlets, we don't take massive bailouts to tell you what the government wants you to know. Instead, we go out there and we find out the story, what's really happening on the ground, so that you can see both sides and hear the other side for once. But that's only thanks to you guys, and you can help us out at rebelnews.com.